The Body and Sexuality in History, a Journey Through Time. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to a new journey through time. Before we begin, we invite you to subscribe to our channel to continue supporting us and discover together the most fascinating details of history. Thank you for your precious support and happy listening. Today we will delve into a fascinating and complex topic, the relationship with the body and sexuality in ancient times. For a long time, historical research has neglected everyday and common aspects, such as the human body, relegating them to the margins of academic narrative. This silence was partly dictated by the influence of the Christian conception, which rigidly separated the parts of the body considered noble from those considered trivial or shameful. Such an approach, fueled by centuries of religious moralism, contributed to a cultural contempt for the body, also influencing scholars who found themselves exploring this theme through indirect documentation, often filtered by moral and philosophical judgments. The condemnation of lust, preached by figures such as St. Augustine, had a lasting impact on Christian thought, instilling a sense of guilt towards sensual pleasures and demonizing the female body. Women were portrayed as symbols of sin, accused of luring men towards perdition. This deeply misogynistic view had devastating consequences, such as the persecutions of witches in the Middle Ages and the macabre representations of the female sex in popular culture, often associated with images of decay and disease. However, this representation of the female body is not an objective fact, but a cultural construction that reflects prejudices and fears of society. Guido Almansi, a scholar of the poetry of Gioacchino Belli, advanced an interesting analogy of Engel's origin, suggesting that in a degraded society, men would relate to women as the bourgeoisie to the proletariat. This vision reinforced the image of the female body as impurity and sin, but history, fortunately, is not so linear. Thinkers, such as Giordano Bruno and Giulio Cesare Vanini, rebelled against this dominant narrative, exalting the pleasure of the flesh and questioning the traditional conception of sexual sin. Their vision found an echo in some religious circles that defended the right to sexual pleasure as part of human nature. With the advent of the Renaissance and Baroque, this complex interaction between moral repression and the vindication of sexual pleasure intensified. In this context, the 18th century marked a radical transformation, inaugurating a period of greater openness towards pleasure and female beauty, which found expression in a new conception of aesthetics and gender roles. In the medical field, this new vision found an important supporter in Nicolas Venet, who in 1686 published the treatise Tableau de l'amour. This revaluation of the female body was also evident in the arts and literature, where macabre representations that emphasized the degradation of the body after death were abandoned. Women were no longer seen exclusively as obstacles to the spiritual path, but began to be valued through a new aesthetic. Parts of the body, such as knees, calves, thighs, and buttocks, until then ignored or marginalized, became the object of attention and were reinterpreted according to the aesthetic and erotic canons of the time. This change found expression in manuals such as the Manual of the Courtesan, 1715, and the Academy of Graces, 1760. But also in the works of artists such as François Boucher, who immortalized women in daring poses, celebrating the beauty of the female body. At the same time, the concept of personal hygiene also underwent a transformation. For centuries, water had been avoided for fear that it would dilate the pores and promote the spread of the plague, but with the advent of the 18th century, attention shifted to the importance of cleanliness. The bidet, often depicted in the paintings of François Boucher and Jean-François Garnier, became a symbol of this new hygienic awareness. Before then, artistic representations focused on the washing of hands or feet, or on scenes of delousing reflecting the poor hygienic practices of the time. This new attention to hygiene was not only motivated by aesthetic reasons, but also by medical considerations. Treatises such as De la Santé, 1762, emphasized the importance of frequently washing the parts of the body most exposed to sweat and odors to prevent diseases such as syphilis. Venereal diseases, which were once interpreted as divine punishments, began to be seen as consequences related to poor hygiene and physical health. This change marked a shift towards a more rational approach, reducing the influence of religious moralism in the understanding of disease. The West, which for centuries had interpreted leprosy, plague, and syphilis as punishments for human lust, rediscovered the pleasure of hygiene as a means of prevention. This new sensitivity translated into a growing attention to the body and its well-being, paving the way for an era in which pleasure and cleanliness were no longer seen as antagonists, but as complementary elements of a more harmonious life. Subscribe to our time travel channel and leave a like to support our content.